Welcome to another episode. Today I'm joined by Austin, who is one of the co-founders of Omni. And Austin and I were on a Twitter space a few months ago about bridges, where we were just like talking about if bridges are just multisigs. And we had a really fun conversation, right? So I'm hoping we can do something similar today. I feel like Austin brings a unique perspective to a lot of things. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, I feel similarly about the way you look at the world. So looking forward to this conversation. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, likewise. So let's just get deep into it, right? You guys recently launched a demo for a product that's built for chain abstraction. I want to know what's your core thesis for building Omni right now? Like, what's the
Mhm.
strategic bet you're making for the next 2-3 years in the ecosystem?
Yeah, I think so this is all downstream of how I think value accrual is going to work. And I actually think most of the space has this wrong. I think the whole industry was psyoped into like thinking L1 good, like low in the stack, like be the bottom infrastructure. And I put out some thread about this, but I think it has just led to a massive misallocation of capital to like everybody's just launching their own chain. Almost all of them are like general purpose chains. And I think that came downstream of this post in 2016 that Union Square Ventures put out called the Fat Protocol Thesis. And it basically claimed uh, that value accrual in the blockchain world would be inverted compared to what we're seeing in Web 2 world. So obviously we have Facebook and Google, these mega apps that have accrued most of the value. This post basically said, well, actually, maybe it's going to be the protocols underneath that capture all the value. This, I think, led to the primary value like valuation methodology that people thought about. But I think it's wrong. I think it's super, super wrong. And I think we're getting data that proves this now. I actually am very much looking at the world through this kind of order flow lens at this point, where the most important variable is proximity to order flow origination. And I think value accrual is going to look a lot like it did in Web 2, where the closest people to the customer are the companies and teams that can extract the most value and will be able to become the biggest. And what that means is that these chains are the farthest from the actual order flow origination. And so that thesis is honestly driving a majority of the direction that we're taking at Omni.
Okay, so that makes sense, right? Like, so you kind of want to make apps your customers, and you're saying that there are so many chains at this point that the chain kind of does not matter. They're at the bottom of the stack, maybe only used for settlement.
Mhm.
So like, how does a chain actually exist and like accrue value in this world, or do we not need so many chains, or do we just like consolidate to a few dominant players later on?
Yeah, I don't think we need so many chains. I mean, already today, you can tell, right? We have a bunch of useless chains. Not to be like an asshole, but a lot of these chains have no activity on them. Really, if you think about it, the ones that do today, there are some others that I do have activity. I don't want to downplay it too much, but the ones that have primary activity right now, it's Ethereum L1, Solana, and Ethereum's L2 ecosystem. That's really the chains that have the most activity right now. There are a couple others there that are like close, but still, those are the ones that most people think about. Um, yeah, I don't think we need a bunch of chains. I think this really is downstream of people thinking, okay, cool, I can have high valuation if I make chain, so I'm going to make chain. And that is how we waltzed into this place where we have a bunch of chains that don't have much activity. Um, yeah, I think the space is going to learn quickly though, because we're now getting data showing that, hey, this is not how it's playing out. Specifically, the one that a lot of people are focused on right now is Ethereum L1 and L2s. And so, for anybody who doesn't kind of know the actual data here, what's happening is L2s pay fees to L1, but turns out that most of the fees that are accrued when people submit transactions are from priority fees, which like order the transactions. If you're not, a majority of the fees are not paid just to put them on chain; it's to get your transaction ordered. And all those are getting paid to L2s. So now the L2s are making all the money instead of L1. And we've seen Ethereum L1's revenue fall off a cliff, and now it's inflationary again. And now, you know, the ultrasound money meme of this being a deflationary network is no longer true. And everybody in the Ethereum ecosystem is freaking out about like what the point of L1 is. I think this is going to go even further though. I think the applications themselves are going to be capturing the priority fees as opposed to the L2s. And I think we're starting to see early designs on this. It has this absurd meme of called AS, application specific sequencing, very early stages of this. But long term, I think it moves even from L2s to applications. And that to me is just the space incrementally leaning into this order flow thesis of wherever the actual order flows are, or the actual orders are created, that is where the value is going to accrue, whether it's from priority fees or something like that. It's really just proximity to the customer.
Got it. So like the order flow is the most important thing in a chain abstracted world, right?
It's the only thing. Yeah.
Okay. And then where does Omni kind of fit into this picture?
Hmm. So yeah, the way that we're looking at it is effectively that we're in a local maximum in terms of adoption in the industry. We're in casino mode right now. Casino mode's fun. I have a good time here, but very few people in the world. There's a great stat in the recent Andreessen report where 90% of the holders of crypto have never interacted on chain. Because doing anything on chain today is absurdly difficult. You have to think about gas. You have to think about RPCs. You need to possibly think about gas on multiple different platforms and bridging your app. Like it's ridiculous. It kind of reminds me of there's this video from the 90s of somebody showing like how easy it is to email, and they're like literally plugging and unplugging modems together and stuff. People just work at a low level of abstraction today. And so I think there's a massive opportunity to just continually abstract away the complexity of working with this stuff so that in the short term, it'll be deprecating the idea of bridging to users. Bridging will still happen behind the scenes. It's just going to be solvers like Wintermute and stuff. That's kind of step one in my view. Step two is onboarding these centralized exchange users. The other 90% of people that hold crypto but don't do anything on chain today, we're very close. And that is like a customer segment that is just very proximate to being onboarded. And then downstream of that, I think it's about expanding the actual user base to people who just use the internet. So that's what we're mostly focused on. Just there are so many users that are so close to being able to use crypto. They literally hold it today. They're just not doing anything on chain. That's directionally what we're focused on.
So it's basically like, let's say some of the users are on centralized exchanges, right? Like all of us kind of start from there because we want to invest in crypto and like have financial exposure to it. So you're right in saying that these users are so close to crypto, they're open to the idea. That's why they're at least like holding it. So do you
Mhm.
think that those centralized exchange users with like more abstraction by someone like Coinbase, Binance could be moved on chain and like shown some of these applications if there were like more abstractions? Right now, there's just too many hoops. That's why they don't want to go through that process.
Yeah, completely. And I think that will happen. I think we're already seeing that happen. The company that is pushing this forward the most is Coinbase. They are good. I don't know how they got such a crack team recently, but the stuff they have been shipping is very, very impressive. I don't know if you talked with the socket team on here yet, but they're working on something that came downstream of something that Coinbase actually originally shipped, where it's kind of like Coinbase users can just hold their funds on Coinbase, but do things on Base. It's in a very rudimentary form today, but even Coinbase themselves are actively building things that can do this. And so this is the future. I think centralized exchanges are going to become front ends to the on-chain economy.
Mhm.
Where we're seeing trading activity progressively move on chain. It's still at an early stage. It's only like 15% of the spot volume, and that's not even touching perp volume. Obviously, most of it is still happening on centralized exchanges. It's how top exchanges like Binance, OKX, and Bybit have a monopoly or an oligopoly on the trading market. But over time, I think the amount of financial activity that is conducted regarding crypto is going to migrate on chain, and these centralized exchanges are just going to become wallets effectively. They're going to be like banks. Banks don't actually, well, like your local bank doesn't actually do the financial activities, kind of like a front end to the plumbing behind the scenes. That's what I think is going to happen with centralized exchanges, but it will take multiple years.
Yeah, I feel like Coinbase has set the playbook for centralized exchanges. So all of us have
Mhm.
a mental model to kind of figure out how does that
Yeah.
look like the onboarding from a centralized exchange to them getting on chain. But like I feel other than centralized exchanges, it's probably the apps that start marketing towards the masses, right? Like right now,
Mhm.
if someone builds an app, the mental model is very much which chain is the app building on, and then how do I market to the users on that chain, or like how do I
Yeah.
get users from other chains, right? But
Mhm.
with what you're saying, the app that launches, they can now start like normie friendly marketing where you're putting ads on the television or like you're putting ads on YouTube and trying to attract a wider audience set.
We're getting there. I would not say we're there yet, but we're getting there. And it quickly, in the next year, I think we will be there. I think a lot of the activities on chain right now are still very heavily financialized and speculation focused. But nobody really cares about taking out a loan in Aave. outside of people who might watch this, like normal humans like don't care about that at all. And so I don't think we're going to see marketing towards like low level DeFi plumbing, but more fun, exploratory, consumery, creative applications. I think will have the opportunity to do that.
Okay. And then like Omni kind of sits at the back end part of it, like abstracting all the blockchain infra and the app can just work.
Yeah, yeah. Just speaking transparently, what we care about here is uh, like Omni is an EVM plus an interop protocol built for the Ethereum ecosystem. That's at a literal network level what it is, and we use those primitives to build layers on top of it so that people don't have to think about the chains. That's the strategy that we're pursuing right now.
Got it. And then like you guys, when you were building earlier, you were positioning as an interop protocol, right? Like a layer
Hmm.
zero. And that's how I got to know about your project. But
Hmm.
like I've seen some of your posts recently, and then you were talking about how that was the wrong mental model. So I'm kind of
Hmm.
curious, like what changed in your mental model, and what does Omni do today that something like a layer zero or Axelar could not, right?
Yeah.
So in my head, it could be a lot more about positioning because I feel like the tech is there. It's just about how it's being used.
Hmm.
But I'm curious to know like your thought process there.
Yeah. It's funny. One thing that I've learned, so my Twitter has grown. I really only started posting more over the past like 2 to 3 months. But the number one thing that I found hits the hardest engagement wise is just being honest with people and just calling out things that we have messed up. And so one thread I had that got more attention was me basically being like, cross chain apps is not it. This is not like I've tried to sell this for a year straight. This is not how this is going to work. And what we did, so yeah, effectively our go to market strategy was cross chain apps in the Ethereum ecosystem. Like, this came from us being a DeFi protocol in the Ethereum ecosystem. That's why we originally built Omni. Um, and so we were trying to sell like, hey, this is an Ethereum native interop protocol. Build Ethereum native cross-chain like roll-up wide applications. We were able to make pretty decent progress on our test nets, like 40 teams building on us. But you know, squinting, I could tell why people were working with us, and it's because everything that was like auxiliary to the product. So it was mentorship on raising, investor intros, co-marketing opportunities, just a ton of these things that were really almost accelerator like in some form. It wasn't because they could make their application. They kind of like went through the work of making their application available across multiple ropes so that they could get connected to investors and stuff. Um, and so looking at this, it's kind of like, why are people working with us on all these kind of like edge things that we're providing, not the actual core value proposition? And it's because it kind of sucks. If you look at it from an actual engineering perspective, what does it take to make an application cross chain? Takes like a month of scoping architecture wise to think about, okay, when my application is in like 6 different places, how does that work? How is it still secure? So you spend a month doing that, then you spend at least 2 months building that. And then you have to go spend 100 grand on audits, and that takes an additional month. So 4 months just went by just so you could have this thing be crossing. Your engineering team was not focused on improving the product. It was just focused on expanding the addressable market. And the reality is, almost no team in crypto has product market fit. So this is out the gate irrational for almost every project out there. So that's why I think cross-chain apps don't make sense, because it's so ridiculously burdensome from an engineering perspective that it is just not rational for the stage of maturity of basically any company in this space. So that was really what we learned after trying to sell this thing for like a year. And that was transparently a little spooky. Like, oh God, like we just built this whole network and this doesn't make sense. But around this time was when I started learning like or leaning more deeply into chain abstraction. And I think the answer exists within chain abstraction simply because of the impact it has on the engineering efforts. But yeah, that's how I've come to look at the world. Cross chain apps don't make any sense. Layer Zero and Wormhole have tried to sell this for years. Together, they've raised nearly $500 million. And can you think of a single cross chain app that has a ton of traction? Maybe like one, two, but like they raised $500 million. So it's not only our experience that makes me pretty convinced that cross chain apps don't make sense. It's the lack of success that we've seen from other interop protocols.
Okay. So like, tell me if I'm thinking about this wrong, right? Like, when you say cross chain, I'm thinking about asset movement, and right now that's probably the most popular use case because bridges are popular.
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
when I think about a layer zero or an Accrual, I'm thinking about like the Omnichain, interchain kind of positioning, right? So I could
Hmm.
technically build an application that just lives on layer zero or an Accrual, and then like the chains are abstracted in that sense. Like if you've seen that parallel game example that's built on Avalanche, I think they're using layer zero, right?
Hmm.
Like, and last month there was, or like this month there was this news that it's one of the most widely played games. So there's
Are you talking about off the grid or parallel?
parallel. I think I'm
Okay.
not sure, but like I think it's parallel.
Mhm.
And the stat was basically it's one of the most popular games, and they're using layer zero, right? And there's
Mhm.
no concept of cross chain there. It's basically using layer zero for some in-game assets. Uh, so I feel like the cross chain framing is maybe not right. And what's the difference between building omni chain on layer zero and building a chain abstracted application? Like that's one of my like personal doubts as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so my background is engineering, and so this is going to be an engineering oriented response. To me, the difference between building cross chain and chain abstracted is cross chain. As an engineer, you have to think about distributed state. Uh, it's like, okay, what does that mean? The EVM was originally designed so that even though there's thousands, hundreds of thousands of computers running the Ethereum network, to programmers, it looks like one computer. They don't need to think about multiple computers, aka distributed state, because that's way more complex and you're going to program in more bugs. Cross chain to me, you have to think about multiple computers. Chain abstracted, you think about one computer and you can just access all the users. That's the difference to me. And but more precisely, in a chain abstracted world, you don't need to edit your smart contracts. You don't need to upgrade them. You don't need to think about that. You can work at higher levels of abstraction, like the front end.
Okay. So like, how is this made possible? Is it because Omni as an architecture design is also a chain, so you don't need to like worry about the state on different chains in the background?
Mhm. No, that's what we were trying to sell originally.
Okay.
And so I at this point I'm kind of a LARP engineer where I like understand how all this stuff works, but I haven't coded in a couple years. And so I often think in shapes. My co-founder makes fun of me all the time, but this is how I think about this is a mental model that I have for things. So there's this amount of complexity in interacting with crypto applications. Okay, just like this spectrum we have here. Um, the world that we live in today is we take this much of the complexity and we put it on users. So they're handling a majority of the complexity. And then, developers have this other little chunk where they build their application, but they're kind of expecting users to know how to bridge and move their chains around all these assets, manage gas across them, switch networks. That's the world that we live in today. Cross chain apps invert that. So instead of this much being on users, it's this much put on developers, and then users can have a simple experience. This is what we tried to sell. The problem is that this is really hard. Even though developers are smarter than users, this is very expensive and time intensive. So the solution to this, in my opinion, is actually to introduce a third party solvers so that users can live in their simple little world, click button. Developers can just deploy their application in one place, and then you make winter mute, do all the complex shit in the middle. They have to think about bridging, uh, moving their gas to switching, all the like cross chain stuff. You just make solvers think about that. That's the way that I'm looking at the world
Okay. And then this model, of course, also has its trade-offs, right? Like you're surely
right.
outsourcing the complexity to solvers, but then right now there are not enough solvers. We're all hoping that there's one day enough order flow that there are more solvers incentivized to do all of this like complex work.
Yeah, yeah. So the main what's the bear case on chain abstraction? Really, in my opinion, it's not on the user experience side because it can make the user experience better. They just click button, and if we're trying to be like annoying crypto people, they declare their intent, but they just click button. Developers just build their application, put it in one spot. Very simple for them as well. The real potential bear case comes in the solver world. Do we have enough solvers competing to get things done efficiently? Do we have enough solvers to have sufficient liquidity for high uptime across all these different networks? Do the market structures lead to a centralization of solvers and it's kind of an oligopoly of just a few different solvers? That's where all the bear case questions exist, in
Mhm.
my opinion. My take is we're just at a very immature stage and there is very little order flow. I was chatting with Jim from Catalyst, and he basically walked us through. He's like, yeah, there are different corridors between platforms right now where just as some amateur hobbyist, you can go start earning 20 to 40% APY by setting up a solver route. So there are good profit opportunities. I just think that the scale of the order flow does not justify investment from a lot of these shops right now. So I really think it's about increasing order flow so that we can see this more mature solver marketplace.
Yeah, I feel like any conversation that I've had on this topic, it basically comes down to this, right? Like right now, cross chain, omni chain, chain abstracted, whatever, there's not enough order flow. So we really cannot incentivize solvers to come in. Like if you look at the same chain swap volume, there are enough solvers there because there's like billions in volume every day. So once we have that kind of scale in this market, we will see more solvers, and that makes sense, right? So like
Mhm,
how does Omni go about building distribution? Like how do you guys think about getting order flow, getting like the first few apps live on Omni?
mhm. Yeah. The initial product that we're rolling out here is a front end SDK. Uh, it's a front end SDK that allows user to click button, allows developers to deploy in one place, and then makes the solvers think about all the bridging stuff. So, for example, if an application is just on L1, they want to be able to source deposits from all the different L2s and not make their users think about it. The front end SDK that we're building allows the user to, let's say they have a 1 ETH on Optimism. They can go to the application and just click button to deposit 1 ETH into the protocol. And they don't need to think about the fact that they're on Optimism, the protocol is on Ethereum. It just happens behind the scenes. That is the short-term strategy that we're pursuing for increasing order flow in solver marketplaces.
And
Long
then
term, that's a different thing. I play that like a little more closely to the chest, but if you read between the lines about the things I'm saying, it's pretty clear how we're thinking about things.
yeah, and like you guys also invest a lot of resources into university programs, right? I feel like
Mhm.
because maybe you have a background from like a top university, do you feel like some of the best apps for the next generation will come from there, like the developers in the top universities?
Honestly, Harvard is kind of bearish.
Okay.
Like, like I people on the Omni team are dropouts. Honestly, I don't know where a majority of the people on our team went to college because I don't care. I think a lot of people who went to Ivy Leagues are. I mean, I saw a lot of people from Harvard went into investment banking because that's what success looks like. And when I was building my first company and starting it my senior year, people used to chirp my co-founder and I like, oh, the Bitcoin boys. And so I think Ivy League's actually kind of bearish in crypto because it's very traditional and there's a lot of social pressure to follow the traditional successful path. You go get an investment banking job at JP Morgan. So why are we doing this research program with Dartmouth, Yale, Harvard, and uh, I can't think of the fourth one. Anyway, those types of schools. Honestly, it's because I know students there, and they're hungry. Oh, it's Stanford, I think. Anyway, it's because they're hungry. I know a number of these kids, and they're the kids who are kind of rejecting the traditional path. And I like working with younger founders. I like helping them kind of often they kind of have no idea what's going on. And it amuses me to see them stumble around. But I was very lucky early in my career. I had mentors and support from people who had taken a couple laps already. And that was massively impactful in, any progress that I've seen in my career. And so I just personally enjoy it. And I already had those connections at these universities. And so we wanted to set up this program to get these kids deeper into the frontier of crypto, really to nudge them to build more companies. So TLDR, do I think the best companies are going to come from Ivy Leagues? No, honestly, I think that's a bear signal, but I just happen to know a number of people at each of these universities. And so wanted to kind of give them more resources.
Makes sense. And like I feel like a lot of your posts on Twitter are also catered towards the next generation of founders, right? Like advice on fundraising or like how to think about building companies. So if you had to like break down your Twitter strategy, yours and your companies, do you
Mhm.
guys have a strategy in place, or is it more just like chaos and see what works out?
Yeah, a big part of it is chaos for sure. I mean, especially the main Omni account, we are very actively iterating to try to figure out the optimal strategy there. On my personal though, what I have found, so I've been lurking on Twitter since 2017, 2018. And really, I think I have 1,000 followers right now, but for many years I had a couple hundred. Then eventually it hit like 1,000 or 2,000. But that was kind of what my Twitter account looked like for a very long time. Only recently did I start posting more, and honestly, I wish I had done it much sooner. I probably would be more successful right now if I had started doing it years ago. Um, but what I've found is really just yapping, just throwing shit out there, seeing what hits and what doesn't. And the reason I'm posting a lot about early stage startup stuff is because I built a company before this, so I've kind of been through the initial stages of a company twice now, and simply because that's the content that hits the hardest right now. I through iterating and A/B testing, I can tell pretty clearly the primary audience that I have on Twitter is earlier stage founders, and so when I post about chain abstraction, it gets about half the engagement that early startup posts do. So I'm honestly iterating and learning myself. And for anybody else who's trying to build up their Twitter, literally, it's just uh, simple strategy. If you aren't posting right now, make it a goal to post twice a day for the next week, and then do a retro at the end of the week. Look at all the tweets, see what hit, what didn't, incorporate those learnings, and do it again the next week. And do this for 3 months, and you'll probably gain like 1,000+ followers because you'll learn a ton in that time.
Yeah, I mean, and it also seems like you've kind of put together a core team that also does the same thing, right? So it's almost like you have
Yeah.
five fact accounts at this point, just talking about something or the other.
Yeah, it's funny because the range of content that we have, all of my posts are technical and foundery oriented. Graham shit posts constantly, and he's good at it. Matt on our team as well is kind of a mix of BD strategy and shit posting. But honestly, this was not an intentional thing. Our team has just leaned in recently. Grace, she's been on our team for a couple years, but she's been in university, and so it's been in a kind of part-time capacity. She started posting a couple days ago, and already she had like 20 followers at the beginning of this week. Now she has 100 because she's just shipping stuff out there, and she's funny. So so her engagement's going up. Honestly, this is not a. We've talked like, this is probably good for the organization to have people out there telling. No, nobody's. I'm nobody's really very intentionally telling the story of Omni today. I kind of am sometimes, but I think we're all really just learning how to get engagement on Twitter. I think that we're equipping ourselves with resources to improve distribution of our key messaging for Omni down the line. But I wouldn't say it's really structured in that way right now. We're all kind of learning together. Yeah, it has been an interesting experiment that we've been running though.
Though it definitely makes sense, and the bull market energy kind of makes you want to do it, right? Like if you were doing this in the bear market, nobody gives a fuck, like nobody's reading my posts. But then now,
Yeah.
if you put something out, there's so much engagement. Like there's airdrop
Mhm.
farmers, there's people more active, the markets are better, so there's like more appetite for these posts, and this is what has worked for us as well, right? Like now we have 5 or 6 people in the team who want to do it because they get engagement.
Mhm.
Slowly, like you just find that you don't need anyone to quote tweet your post because you have 10 people in your team who would spread the message, right? So
Mhm.
it's just a better vibe. And to
Mhm.
be honest, like Twitter can be brutal at times, so it's just nice to have more people around you. If that
Yeah.
makes
I mean, that's another thing. I know some of my posts are cringe. I'm fully aware of that. Sometimes people DM me and they're like, dude, shut up. And I'm like, I know, okay, but it's hitting engagement wise. I just got 100 followers, so I'm going to keep doing it. And sometimes people reply and talk shit, aggressive shit. But honestly, you just got to be fine with that. It's the internet. Sometimes accounts that have literally zero followers just post something super aggressive in response to things that I post. And just that's the internet. There are just trolls out there. You got to be comfortable with that. For anybody who is interested at a more strategic level, Celestia is really the the company that has done this intentionally. If you go scroll Celestia's main Twitter feed, rarely is it it's almost all retweets of team members and community members. Very the ratio of company posts to retweets of others, it's like 5 to 1 for retweets of others to actual things that they post. And it's very interesting. They'll post, okay, cool, new upgrade coming out, some brief message, and then each of the people will quote tweet it with like smaller blocks equals faster chain, and then you'll get more of a right curve Mustafa like here's a breakdown of the speed, and then you'll get our equivalent of the more like left curve Graham. They'll tweet fast, 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 fast. So they really use like they hit all different ends of the curve through using personal accounts from people on the team. And this is a unique strategy. Very few companies are executing on this, but Celestia, if people are looking to study what this strategy done well really looks like, it's Celestia. That's the number one account I would recommend.
Yeah, I think like my mental model for audience on Twitter is basically there's left curve and right curve, right? Like left curve likes the memes and shit posts. The right curve needs the research and like the thought leadership kind of articles.
Yeah, yeah.
And the mid curve, you can just ignore them because they will either be bullied by the left curve to believe something, or they will just like follow their favorite right curve people and just like repeat what they say. So you really need to focus on either the right curve or the left curve.
Yeah, don't try to do both. It's funny because I have certain types of posts I know I can roll out and they'll get a higher amount of engagement. They take time and effort though, because most of my content is more technical. Graham, right now we're racing to 10K followers, and he'll just take 10 projects and compare them to Subway sandwiches, like different types of Subway sandwiches, and he'll get 200 likes. And then all these top founders throughout, like Anatolia will reply like, we're not that Subway sandwich. And Smokey from Barachain comes and be like, I'm more of a Chipotle. And he just knows how to farm engagement very easily. And it takes him 10 seconds to be like, they're a meatball sub, they're a salami, blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah, he's good with left curve. But anytime I try to do left curve stuff, it flops. It doesn't get any engagement.
Awesome. I feel like even your team is a good case study for anyone who's looking to just bootstrap attention on their project, right?
Well, the thing is, I think a lot of people still don't know what Omni is and what it does because we haven't found a way to channel this attention into actually promoting Omni's key messaging. It's more just, okay, cool, our tweets are getting views, but they still have no idea what Omni does. We're learning. We'll channel it eventually and stuff, but right now just lists of Subway sandwiches and stuff.
Hey, it works. It's fine. No one's complaining.
Yeah.
But yeah, like coming back to chain abstraction and like what you guys are building. So like you have some upgrades coming up. So maybe like you can share some insights into like what you guys are building and what do you expect for like the app developers to build on top.
Yeah. So, yeah, very excited for the rest of the year we have here. Maybe Q1. I'm not going to say any timelines we have for anything, just because my engineering team. That's just general rule. Don't announce the date unless you can literally just like tweet it and it's ready to go. But yeah, the final testnet is out right now. I can communicate publicly that privately our mainnet is running right now. Like the chain that is mainnet is currently running, but it's just like currently not exposed to the public. There's just some final, all of our audits are done, but we're running a security competition right now. So incorporating some patches from that and an upgrade, just onboarding more operators. It's kind of like the logistics done with it or that are remaining with it. And then on top of that, we're going to be rolling out this front end SDK. Very excited for that, specifically because it's so easy to integrate compared to this cross-chain app type design, where people literally don't have to do anything with their smart contracts. They don't need to think about this more kind of dangerous design space. And downstream, they don't need to audit anything because it's just a front end SDK that they have to integrate. So that's going to be the main product that we're taking to market once the main network is live. Yeah, very excited for that. We're seeing we have some very exciting initial build partners for this. Yeah, I'm very excited for the initial teams that we're going to be working with because we've just chosen to take a more concentrated strategy on teams that we're working with because The reality is, I think a lot of founders in this industry lie to themselves about this. We do not have product market fit. Basically, nobody has product market fit. And so instead of trying to generate a ton of volume and activity, we kind of did this with our testnet. Super honestly, we tried to get big ecosystem good, but it gave us like confusing signals because like, all right, we have a bunch of teams building on this, but does anybody actually really care about the product, or are we misleading ourselves? So now we're very focused on like, all right, let's work with super smart teams that we're super bullish on and work with very few of them to just iterate quickly on this product. That's the strategy right now. So it's launch mainnet network alongside this front end SDK that will allow people to just source users and liquidity from multiple rollups, even if their app is just in one place.
Got it. And like I was just curious, how do you see competition in the chain abstraction ecosystem, right? Because if you look at the ecosystem like mind map, there's of course a lot of collaboration across stacks, but then that's not the reality, right? Like everyone is fighting for the same deals at the end of the day. So
Yeah.
how do you look at it right now? Like who's your competition?
Yeah. I'm a very competitive person at large. Having said that, though, honestly, it's so early. We're all trying kind of different things. Like Li-Fi is focused on a few things. Particle is focused on a few things. I don't really see us as direct competitors with anybody in the chain abstraction stack today. Do I think we'll all likely be competing on similar domains in the next 9 to 18 months? Yeah, like straight up, we might be competitors soon. I don't know. I honestly don't know, but I do think um, we're taking steps to incrementally improve clarity of what matters here and what doesn't. I think the first step was the cake framework, where it was very theoretical. It's like, all right, there's authorization, solver, settlement, and it's kind of like, okay. And after diving deep into that mental model, honestly, I disagree with a number of things there. I think actually what's more important, okay, actually a good way to communicate this is uh, the market map that the rollup co rolled out, bucketed it as like authorization, solver, settlement. I don't think that that is a good breakdown, because what actually matters more, in my opinion, is the interface between these different layers. So between authorization and solver, I think that is a very important interface. And that's where we're targeting right now. But there's no companies in that bucket because it wasn't a bucket in that market map. So I think the cake framework established, okay, let's all kind of align. Here's these groups of activities of things that happen in this chain abstracted world. And then seeing these different companies orient, like we're in we're an orchestration company or we're a solver. It's like, okay, cool, I get that you're thinking about that type of stuff and focusing on that maybe. Yeah, I think we're going to learn a lot quickly here. I think 2025 is going to be a very exciting year for chain abstraction, and I do think the companies that do well are going to do really well, and the companies that don't do well are going to miss the boat, and it's going to suck, and they're going to have a lot of FOMO, and there's going to be a lot of frustration because they're going to be like, oh, we were so close. We were on the market map in
Yeah.
2024. But I do think that it's probably going to be uh, 1 to 3, maybe 4 companies that really prove with empirical data, like, hey, chain abstraction is real. It looks this way, and we're sourcing this much order flow. Obviously, you all have been doing this for a while. Just like, hey, here's serious volume moving through this system. But I think things will get much more clear as order flow increases and people can prove their success with beta this year.
Makes sense. I feel like order flow and distribution at the end of the day says everything, right? Like with the mind maps and everything, it was funny to see how some of the teams kind of adopted those terms into their marketing. Like, what is an orchestrating unit? Like, what does that mean? Why do you have to
Yeah,
use that word for your company? But then
yeah,
it's just a good way to put yourself on the map, I guess.
yeah. Robbie hit me up. He was like, "What bucket would you say you're in?" I was like, "Well, at the most fundamental level, Omni has an interop protocol, so probably there." He's like, "All right, cool. I'll put you in the settlement and infra layer." It's like, okay, maybe I guess. Like,
Put me in all of the buckets. It's good.
yeah, yeah. Can I be in each of them? Actually, yeah.
But yeah, so like as a founder, how do you navigate your team through this, right? Because you're of course trying to figure
Mm,
out what's the best approach. You've kind of pivoted in positioning from an interop protocol to like a chain abstraction protocol, and you're just like rolling out the initial product. So how do you
mhm.
navigate them as you try to find product market fit?
Yeah, this is a great question. Because We have such a toxic mentality in crypto that is supposed to have it figured out. They're supposed to understand the way the world's going to be, and you go build in that direction for 2 to 4 years, and that's the world. That's the thesis was always right. And I see this with earlier founders that I work with. They often feel a ton of pressure to give clarity to their team. Like, I have solved all the answers in here. Like, I know the future, and I don't know why. I mean, I think this honestly is downstream of token culture in crypto. I think a lot of projects launched tokens and felt the need to adhere to a certain worldview to maintain consistency and not have their token holders be like, "Wait, do you not know what you're doing here?" And so I think this has been a very toxic social pressure that has been in the ecosystem. But fundamentally, every founder needs to tell their team, like, this is what is important years from now, but we are going to figure out how to get there together. I'm not going to tell you, I don't know. We don't have product market fit. I think literally just being like, we don't have product market fit. We have to figure it out together. I know that crypto is good for increasing personal freedoms for people everywhere. And so we're going to drive adoption of this. But like, do I know in the next 6 months the highest leverage way we can do that? No. I have like 3 hypotheses. So let's go talk with customers and each one choose a path and build down that path for 2 months. It's quite probable that after 2 months go by, we were wrong. That's not the way that we're actually going. And we're probably going to have to take 10 plus laps on this because that's what building a startup actually is. You just constantly like, here's a hypothesis. Let's go try to build something for 10 customers. Ideally, we get that loop kind of as short as possible. But in crypto, realistically, it's going to be 4 to 12 weeks. And you get to the end and you're like, we were wrong. Okay, well, but now we have like a slightly more nuanced worldview. So there's 3 different directions we can go. Which one should we choose? And that is how people should build companies. That is how every other category of startups outside crypto builds companies. Crypto does not do that right now. And so as we are kind of moving from, hey, we're an interop network to we're a chain abstraction stack. Honestly, the team, it's just very simple to explain to them like, hey, selling an interop protocol is bad because it's at too low of a level of abstraction. We're going to bundle that up and make it easier to access the benefits through a front end SDK. Writing Solidity bad, writing front end code good. Like, and teams like, oh, okay, that makes sense. We're like, and so internally, it's not like some big shift happened here. It's like the integrate at a very like boomer SaaS level explanation of what happened here at a product level. Integration complexity was too high. We needed to build another layer on top of our core product to lower integration complexity. That's all that happened. But publicly, that's like, it's not just interop, it's chain abstraction, blah, and there's this whole like marketing thing on top of it. But at a literal product level, it's just like, okay, we'll wrap it up in a front end SDK and like put some solvers in there. That is what happened. So honestly, I think I made a lot of these mistakes in my first company, and it was hard. It was like things can get really shitty when your team looks at you like, I thought you had all the answers. And you're like, dude, I honestly don't. Like, I think a lot of founders mess this up and feel that pressure. So I think just orienting out the gate, like, I know where we need to go on a 5 to 10 year time frame. I don't know the best path in the next 3 months. So we're going to figure it out together and just take laps on this.
I feel, especially in an industry like crypto, it's almost impossible to know what's going to happen, right? Like the
Yeah,
ecosystem changes
especially, yeah.
entirely in a year.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I wish more companies, I think they will progressively lean into this more like rational strategy of iterating and learning from customers. But at a zoomed out level, I think this is a big reason we have not grown as fast as an industry. We have certain things that have like 1000x out of nowhere. But I think actually solving customer problems has been extremely slow compared to other industries. But I do think we'll progressively get much better at this over the coming years because we'll be forced to. People will start to look at empirical data more and be like, there's no order flow here. Why is there no order flow? And you won't be able to hide behind like, but it's a chain abstracted alt VM. Like you won't be able to just say words to get out of problems in a couple of years. So I am bullish on like this rate increasing.
Okay, I totally agree with this, right? Like my experience with Li-Fi has just taught me exactly this. Like nothing is going to go up in a straight line, so you will have ups and downs, and there will be moments where you feel like, okay, you're at the top, but then there will be like deals lost, and you feel like, okay, like existential crisis is hitting
Yeah.
you now, and then
Mm-hmm.
this is part and parcel of like startup life, I feel.
Mm-hmm. And I think just for your own sanity and for your team's sanity, acknowledging that out the gate, like we do not have product market fit. This is an exciting path, but we are going to figure it out together is the most important cultural thing to communicate because if everybody's just looking at the founder for answers, people are going to get frustrated that they feel like they were sold a lie. And then the founder is going to feel a ton of pressure and not be able to use the resources of the team to learn together. And so just like a toxic, unhealthy way to look at building a company.
Yeah, makes sense. And like before our recording today, I was literally stalking your timeline, right? So like I found I found a bunch of really good posts, and there was like a lot of advice from stuff for founders to just like daily life and how to look at things, right? Like there was a post about how you can build your mental stamina, just like as you think about
Mm.
your physical stamina and things like that. So being selfish here, what kind of advice would you have for someone like me, and like how I can improve from here on?
I mean, I don't know. You're pretty impressive as is. Honestly, you play your game well. There's a reason that I chat with you a bunch. I don't know. What are you looking to improve on?
Nothing. I'm just like fishing for general advice. I would say like not me in particular, but let's
Mhm.
say someone who's been in crypto for the last 3 4 years and is trying to build a career, right? So should they? How should they look at their next step? Should they think about building a company, or basically like what's the next step for someone at this stage?
At the most abstract level, I think if you are hungry and want to work hard, maximize your opportunities for career leverage. So a very clear way you can do that is by starting your own company, and your leverage is kind of only bounded by the amount of resources that you can pull into the organization, whether that is talent or financial resources. That is one way. It's kind of grueling though. Another really good way is find an organization that has a culture of extreme autonomy. So, for example, at Omni, we do not have a big team. We have never had a big team. We literally, just for numerical data, we raised $18 million, and the average size of our team for like 2 years was 5 people. And yeah, kind of ridiculous. But the reality is that that created a culture where every single person on our team had so much expected of them. And downstream of that, it was like I'm doing the opposite of micromanaging. I'm like, please, can you own this entire dimension of the business? And that's a really healthy foundation for how we operate today. So everybody that we bring on board, it's extremely high leverage what they get to work on. And that I think if you're not looking to start a company, join a company that operates in that way, where you can join and they're gonna be like, okay, here's this massive scope of work. You good? It's like we're here to support you in that, but we believe in you and your ability to do this. And people are going to make mistakes along the way, but those are probably the two different best ways to maximize your career growth. And I think people should be doing that if they're in crypto, and they probably also want to do that if they're in crypto.
I feel like that's super good advice because I was never thinking about it this way. But then at LI.F, this is kind of what happened
Yeah.
like in the last 3 years, where Philip was basically like, okay, this is your department. Like, you own this now. Do whatever.
Yeah.
Like, we'll support you. We'll back you. Go make your mistakes, but like, you can own this. So that really helps you grow in like many different ways that you cannot imagine. So I feel like that's super valuable insight for anyone who's looking for like their next step in crypto.
Yeah, and I think what you said there about you will make mistakes is very important. Like, here's this massive scope of like things, but you're going to mess things up along the way. That's fine. None of them are going to kill the company. If it kills the company, like that's my fault. You will make mistakes. All I ask is that you learn quickly and you incorporate those learnings. That I think creates a very empowering environment for people to run and have fun. Honestly.
Awesome. I feel like this was a very nice conversation and like fun and refreshing. And I really appreciate you in the ecosystem, right? Like I feel like some people add something valuable to the ecosystem, and you're definitely one of them. Like you've add something positive to my timeline. So I appreciate your time.
Yeah. Likewise, man. It's been good. I don't know when we originally touched base, a few months ago at this point, but it's been very nice getting to know you, and I appreciate you having me on this. Is this a podcast? What do you call
I don't know.
this thing you got going?
I'm just recording things at this point.
Yeah,
We can call it
yeah.
anything.
That's the right way to view it. Yeah, it's like I don't know. We're experimenting. We'll see what comes of this.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks a lot for your time.
Cool.